So welcome everybody. Thank you so much for taking time out of the schedule, especially during this very tumultuous and very uncertain time. There's a lot of wild things going on in the world. So thank you for taking the time to being with us today. My name is Natalie Eden, and I'm one of the co-leads. We're one of the leads for the Toronto chapter for the Transformative Technology community. And so looking forward to getting to know all of you. We're just launching this group, looking forward to gaining some momentum over the weeks, months, and years ahead. So just wanted to spend a couple of minutes letting you know a little bit about TransTech. For those of you who just recently joined or are thinking about joining, this is actually a free community. This group is really focused on transformative technology, entrepreneurs, investor groups, teams, startup companies, and people with just really great ideas who want to get together and developing technology that's associated with emotional well-being, mental health, and human thriving. At the end of the day, this community, the TransTech community, is going to be a cloister or a safe haven to give you feedback, funding, and friends. So as opposed to, there's a lot of technology communities and meetups and all kinds of different incubators and things out there. What's unique and special about the TransTech community is it's uniquely positioned for people who are working in the mental health, well-being, and flourishing space. At the end of the day, the TransTech community is looking to elevate the human condition. And this is especially important when we're sitting on the precipice, in my opinion, of a huge shift in the access for humanity as we're standing here as pioneers in this new world, because I don't think we're going to be the same after all of this. And we are looking at, as this is a launch point, and by 2030, looking at affecting the lives of 1 billion people. So this is a huge stretch, but we're sort of at this juncture, I think, for transcendental elevation. And again, TransTech technologies are companies that are doing all kinds of exciting new novel things in AI, digital medicine, neurofeedback, et cetera, et cetera. So hopefully you can isolate or see yourself. If you're not currently working in one of these spaces, where could you work in one of these spaces in the future? And we'd love to foster some of those discussions with you moving forward. At the end of the day, there is a huge number of things you can join and participate as part of this ecosystem. We'll be talking about these in future communications with you directly from the Toronto chapter. And there will be lots of links on how you can get involved with our newsletter, meetups, virtual events. And we're super stoked that this is the inaugural event that we are going to be running with the one and only Valerie Fox. I had a chance to meet with her the other day, find her a fascinating person. So super stoked to be talking with her today. And we're going to be running this in a very laid back kind of conversational mode. We're going to be starting off with questions, and I'll talk a little bit about how we'll do the Q&A afterwards. But just to give you a little bit of perspective on this, Valerie has had a really wild run in her career, starting off in computer graphics back in the day when that was a thing. And then actually started to get into professional life coaching. So she brings some of this really neat, both the kind of yin yang or the right brain, left brain component, which I think a lot of us in the TransTech space probably can relate to. And she actually acted like a practice lead with IBM for about 12 years before switching gears and went to the Ryerson University. She's going to talk a little bit about this, and becoming the director for innovative technology solutions. She did that for about 4 years before going back into professional life coaching and then returning. So it's this love-hate relationship with Ryerson, and coming back to start and found the infamous DMZ, which is the infamous incubator, and was also the executive director there for 6 years. And now in the last 5 years, running the Pivotal Point. So super excited to be talking with her today. So we are going to be running this till about 10:30, 10:35 or so. We're going to leave it open for about 15 minutes of questions. At that point, I'd like everybody to take a look at the little black banner that is the indicator that you're on a Zoom meeting. So if you can look for that in your browser right now. And what you'll actually notice is you'll have an opportunity. You can see everybody who's actually in the meeting right now. You'll see that there's a little black button that says More, right? Where you actually click Manage Participants, and then you're going to be able to click More, and then you're going to be able to wave your hand or raise your hand. You can actually see that I've raised my hand, and that way I'll know that you want to actually ask a question at the end. The other option is that you can actually click the chat button. That's actually located in the place where it says more. And here you'd be able to send messages directly to me or to everybody. And if you wanted to upload a file, you could certainly do that as well too. So those are the different ways that you can send in questions using the chat file or to raise your hand, and we will unmute you if you want to ask your question as well. If that makes sense, we will move ahead. So I'm actually going to take off the screen sharing so you can just see, Valerie and myself. And again, just to give you a background, I am the Toronto lead for the transformative technology community, but I also run my own company called Impetus Digital. But what we really wanted to do was talk to Valerie about a lot of different things going on in her space, and really maybe to first of all get Val to tell us a little bit about her background and that really interesting background that she's had going back and forth between, you know, graphics and computer graphics, life coaching, and then founding an incubator at a university. So Val.
Yeah, hi, how are you? I'm trying to get it off my screen, 1 second. There's something weird on the screen. There it is, I got it, okay. Got it, okay, hi, how are you?
Hello.
Okay, thank you for having me. And yeah, I'm not sure exactly where you want to start, but I actually wanted to do a check-in with you. How are you?
For sure. I'm great. Yeah, I just wanted you to start off a little bit about, you know, how you actually got into the incubator space in the first place. There's a lot of people who are on the call right now who are in the startup phase, who are entrepreneurs, or they're sort of fledgling in their companies, or they're also supporting other companies in this space. And I think especially right now with the COVID-19 and some of the other things that are happening, just wanted to get some of the background for you about starting in the incubator space. What was it like back then? And telling us a little bit about the evolution through your career getting to that place.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for actually kind of providing the history of how I got there. But I'm going to go back, if you don't mind, just to show you the path, because the path is pretty interesting to where we are today. I believe that all of us have a toolkit that we've collected throughout our lives of different skills and different experiences, which is so interesting because it actually helps us move on within our careers. So just to start off, the fact is that I've been a designer since the 80s in digital. And so, as you mentioned, I had my own company, a graphic design company, and IBM was a client of mine. And they gave me this incredible offer, which was to be part of a multidisciplinary team for enterprise software. And because they gave me that opportunity, I was in the room with like their best architects, developers, salespeople, and human factors people. So I really got to understand the language of every one of those disciplines. Eventually, I got to lead teams like that from a user-centered approach in design, and it kind of formulated how I worked from then on. So that's, you know, we started that in the early 90s, and I ended up being a creative director for the Sydney Olympics and other very, very large sites. I have a number of inventions that like the shopping cart, universal shopping cart for the web. And also I became the national practice lead for user experience. What was interesting was I befriended the president at the time of Sheridan College, who was Sheldon Levy, who went on through his career to eventually become the president of Ryerson University. And he called me because we had contacts because he would bring in students to IBM and that type of stuff. And we also shared a love of science fiction. And he asked me to jump ship from IBM to Ryerson University to help him make it more innovative and entrepreneurial. Incredible opportunities. And he saw something in me. This is where, you know, champions really come into play. He saw something in me that I kind of didn't see, but I said, sure, let's figure this out. And together, through his vision of really creating an environment for entrepreneurship, we created an incubator. At the time, I didn't know what an incubator was. So just I'm not sure who's on the audience, but just what is an incubator? An incubator is really either a space or a program that helps to either start or grow or accelerate the growth of companies. And it's usually a community of people. And in that community of people, we help each other. We do peer-to-peer mentoring. We bring in specialists. We bring in expertise. And there's different programming that really helps companies to grow. Anyway, we created a space for a number of companies, and we exponentially grew that space. In 3 short years, we went from 6,000 square feet and 75 people to 40,000 square feet and 450 people at a time, about 85 companies at a time, who were really gaining success by being around each other and sharing their knowledge. And it was a huge learning curve for me, because what I learned about incubators is that they are the new learning spaces. These are the new community spaces, and it helps our economy, but it also helps us from a social perspective. And I know I'm jumping around a little bit, but what I'd like to say is, because of COVID, and I know we're going to talk a little bit about it more later on, it's that community spirit that I think is so important, as far regardless of whether we see each other face to face. And I can talk about the many things that are being put in place now because of the various incubators. Anyway, it's been just fantastic. What I learned most of all from entrepreneurs is that spirit, the spirit of collaboration, sharing, and the idea of what customers mean to them. Most of the entrepreneurs that I know, they are, I'll put this expression out, in bed with their customers, meaning that what's important to their customers is important to them. That is why they're very, very successful with their companies. And we help bring in, at the DMZ, we help bring in all different kinds of potential customers to them, because that's what they wanted most and needed most. So we ended up creating a community of communities. All kinds of people wanted to come in, and what was so awesome is they built their own communities too. And so if you think about it, it's this whole network of working, and it's kind of like the internet itself. It's unbelievable. Anyway, so I was there until the summer of 2015, and I had hit my glass ceiling. Quite honestly, I wanted to take this everywhere. I wanted an incubator in every town, every city, every academic institution, and every corporation, and I wanted them to all somehow work together, connect. Like I said, a network of networks. And with new leadership and that kind of stuff, that wasn't their plan, which is fine. But here's the thing, like at the time I was 62 years old, and I only have that many years left. This is what I really believe in. I really believe in creating these kinds of environments. And so I set out to do that with the Pivotal Point. And since then, I've been working around the world, really. I do work in Canada, all the way from the Yukon to Newfoundland, and I can give you all kinds of examples of what's going on there. But also I'm still working with Chimilbang Precinct, which is in Johannesburg. I've worked in Tunisia, and I've worked in Jordan, helping them to put in a women's incubator. So like, it's been spectacular. And what's happening, and I'm seeing it, is that we are creating these amazing connections together. That was a long-winded.
Beautiful. I love that. And that is just brilliant. You said so many cool things there, Valerie. I just wanted to sort of see if we can tease that out and maybe linger on them a little bit longer. And I think what you brought up, which was really interesting, is almost like the incubator has replaced the school. And I'd love you to speak a little bit about what you mean by that. And I think also building on that concept is this concept of the screening that's going on, the fluidity of knowledge versus the rigidity of the textbook. And I was wondering if, how you sort of see the evolution of schooling, of knowledge creation, of knowledge retention as it relates to the incubator, and I think specifically your dream of basically implementing an incubator everywhere. So what does the future of an incubator mean to you?
Well, quite honestly, if I was going to take it the highest level, it is community building and communities of sharing knowledge, sharing expertise, and sharing possibilities and opportunities. And so that's what it means to me. And it has so many different forms, because you're going to see, I don't think it's replacing schools. I think it's augmenting schools. I think that schools are now, funny, but, well, not funny, but now that people are at home and learning online, they're actually using a lot of the techniques that we've been coming up with in the incubators, more so than ever before, which is where we're bringing in other people as we're learning to share that knowledge, to be creative in how we're thinking. I think it's beautiful. And the types of thought processes that happen when you bring a bunch of people together are amazing. And as I was mentioning, I was so lucky because that was back in the early 90s that I was part of this multidisciplinary team. That's what it's all about, bringing different mindsets, different people, different learnings, different experiences together to tackle all kinds of different challenges. And it's amazing how fast you come up with solutions for very particular challenges that we have. It's happening right now. I keep reading these amazing things that where universities are pooling together to create ventilators with the equipment that they have already. Retail stores are starting, or people who make fashion design and that kind of stuff, pooling together their resources to make face masks. It's coming together from multiple disciplines to solve problems. So yeah, that's what it means to me. It's very powerful, regardless of whether you have a space or not.
Yeah, no, and I love that as well too. And you know, and I think what's interesting as well too is you sharing the love of science fiction with the head of Ryerson, and there's just so much I think that's going on today that's very sci-fi, but it's actually I think we've been propelled into this as a new reality. Like you were saying, I think this co-leading, co-sharing, we've been jettisoned in actually doing, almost forcing people who normally are extremely competitive, who are now working together. And so for other people around the table, you know, trans tech, digital leads, entrepreneurs, people starting companies, have already started companies, are thinking of what would be some of the, I guess, the things that people might want to consider as they start a company based on maybe this new reality that we're in?
Well, I guess the first thing is, especially for those who have companies, they're under the gun right now. There's a lot of challenge that they have to work with. There's a lot of expertise out there to help you, by the way. I'm going to start to name some stuff. Just this week, I was part of Tech Toronto. For those people who have never been to a Tech Toronto meetup, they are spectacular. When they're face-to-face, they have 600 to 800 people. Online, there's 200,000 followers while it's going on. And they had this incredible event on Monday online, and they had 1,700 people there. So not only from Toronto, but right across the country. It was free. Amazing speakers. They have all kinds of opportunities to network. And there were a lot of people that were on that event that have true challenges right now. And so what the best thing that I think entrepreneurs could do is to reach out to each other, because we're sharing what we know, and it's, you know, moment to moment, we're getting more and more information, or we're trying different things that are working or not working. Share them. Keep telling people, go into founder circles. There's actually a number of founder circle type of, or masterminds and that kind of stuff, or create your own, bringing together other founders together to discuss various challenges. I also think it's an incredible opportunity. There's a couple of things. Number one is, you said it in the very beginning, our world has changed. And so how we come out of it, no one quite knows. We can, as we go, we can start to make some predictions that may happen, but we have to be fluid and keep changing as we see it. But it means that how are we going to keep things going? The number one is look and see what people need. If what you have right now is not serving people, start to think of what could you offer right now. Doesn't mean you can't go back to what you were offering before, but what would make more sense now? Or join what somebody else is doing if they are actually making a difference. I think that would be awesome. And then the other thing is partner, partner, partner. I believe in partnering to accelerate change. Partner with other people, other disciplines, other different kinds of companies to get something going. And of course, the government is doing everything it can. It's fluid to what it's doing now. Yes, it knows that it's not going to solve everyone's problem. They keep changing and keep adding. I have a lot of confidence in them. I think that they're going to continue to listen to what's going on there, especially with entrepreneurs. It's interesting, if I can say that, especially in the last number of years, there's been a real push by the government for more people to embrace entrepreneurship, which I love. I think the idea that we can be innovative and create companies that are worthwhile for the world is amazing. But the thing is, because of our current situation, how do you do that when there's no money, or you don't have the assets to make that happen, or the resources to make that happen? Again, my mind goes to find people who do, partner, figure out, because I imagine everyone on the call also has special gifts, skills, and that kind of stuff, that if they're not doing it, then, or they're in a stuck place, then reach out, help somebody else, or pivot.
Yeah, no, that's actually a great point. And there's probably potentially a lot of people around the virtual table today who know of somebody, maybe it's even themselves, who are maybe second guessing or reconsidering what they're doing, especially around funding. And I think that there's going to be a lot of concern around what's going to be happening with investors and people who are funding projects. And I'm just curious about your thoughts on how people can stay the course, or what other alternatives they may want to consider, besides really just the informational finding, the networking, the co-founding opportunities to be able to jettison or propel a new idea, or to potentially pivot right now. And I think the reason that's especially of interest for people who are in the trans tech space is there's going to be a huge demand for people around management of anxiety, management of well-being. How do we get people past some of these concerns around social or physical isolation? And how do we get these new ideas or these pivoted ideas through if there may be a temporary or a changing in the way these projects are funded?
It's a huge question. As far as investment and pooling investment, this is where you're going to hit on the channels that you know, and then get yourself into the various meetups that are going on all over the place. A lot of different agencies, governments, banks, they're all starting to put offers out there, whether they suit you or not. It's going to be a kind of a search and find and create relationships that will enable you to move forward. I don't have a steady answer for you, because again, everything's so fluid. But know that, yeah, it's certainly, because that's your audience right here. But I'm thinking about, there's so many different types of entrepreneurs. They're not all tech. Boy, there's ones who are in arts and entertainment. I actually work, and I actually work for a number of incubators in that realm. One is a feminist incubator, which is really cool. So there's different kinds of incubators for different types of companies that are out there. We're all trying to figure it out. I guess my only thing that I can offer right now, which is small, but I think powerful, is reach out to people who maybe you wouldn't have ordinarily, that you might have thought, oh, well, they're too busy to talk to me. People are in a very giving mood right now, because we're all in it together. I'm finding that people are incredibly generous, and then we're generous together, we'll be able to move this forward.
So I'm just curious, with the different meetups, the different, with the Toronto Tech meetup that was so cool on Monday night, and so many other ones that are actually now being offered for free, which I think is a totally new cool conference paradigm that I think we're going to see shifting as well. But I was just curious about what you think are some of these interesting new pivot spaces, especially in light of COVID-19. In the trans tech space, as I was mentioning, a lot of people are working around, neurotech and things that are really helping people with things like their sleep and their anxiety or their depression, or how they physically operate in the world, or their exercise, or all sorts of other things. In your kind of travels, what are you sort of seeing is kind of bubbling to the top of recent that's really kind of popular?
So again, I'm seeing a lot of generous spirit that will likely evolve. I'll say likely evolve into opportunity. Even, and a lot of I think it starts locally, because within your own communities. So for instance, this is a light one, but I'll mention it. So we have, I have a Pilates class that out of the blue, I got a ping. I hadn't gone to it for like, I don't know, 3 months, which is terrible, but I've been busy, and terrible excuse. And I got a note to say, Val, you must come, it's free. And invite your friends. And now every Saturday, I got a Pilates class that I'm bringing in for now. What's so great about it is it's reintroduced me back to Pilates, and I will pay once I'm done. So it just, and that's a very simple one, I think, because you were also talking about AI and all kinds of stuff like that. That I should tell you that I'm going to forget the name of the app right now, but I also have been trying out different apps to help me concentrate. I have Alzheimer's in my family, so especially because of my age, I want to keep my mind fresh. So I wear a headset. It's checking out my various brain waves so that I can keep my brain healthy. I find that fascinating. So it's a question of how do you get it out so people know about your stuff? That's going to be, it's a new way of marketing. So I invite people to start to get creative of how you're going to be reaching people. And one of the ways that kind of works, and I've been bringing to different incubators, is what we call triple play in your ecosystem. And what that means is, yeah, I'm going to be using the same theme again and again. It's about partnership. So look at your ecosystem and see who is out there that's not in your usual space. It's not the usual places that you go to get people to know about the types of things that you're selling, the services that you're selling. Go to others who could actually help you reach and distribute your service or your product in a different way. It's like, look at the person's clients. So your usual clients, if you thought about it that way, you're actually going to expand your net that much more. And you're going to join forces with other people to make that happen. It's just a way to really take your net and push it out a little bit further.
I really love that concept, and so many people speak about mindset, about growth mindset as opposed to fixed mindset. And the thing is, as we all know, we have lazy brains and we like to function on heuristics and bias and doing the same old, and it's hard to break out of beliefs because it takes energy and it takes momentum, and we do sometimes respond to doing the same things over and over, but really love the concept. I think Carol Dweck wrote a book called Mindset on that concept, and just spending some time diverting and converting. So getting into some big picture thinking, going beyond what you think, and getting uncomfortable and sometimes living on that edge or in the gray space of like living in ambiguity, which doesn't feel right to us. We always want to get back to good. So I think you bring up some really good concepts on, sometimes stretching yourself, doing something that feels really uncomfortable sometimes, just so that you can see what goes beyond your traditional venues and forums and distribution channels. Sometimes things will come up at you that you never knew was even going to be an opportunity.
So okay, thank you for that, because I'll give you a personal story. So I work with this wonderful young woman named Maggie Grayson. Maggie Grayson has a company called Futures Present. She's a futurist. And we've done some work together, which has been, I love working with her. And it's how I work. Generally what I do is I'm a consultant, and I have my company, and I have other consultants that I partner with. I partner with Lori Sute. I partner with Petra Casson-Much, who has a magazine called Lizbeth and is a feminist. And we come together for certain types of companies. But just very recently, Maggie called me up and asked me to be part of something like to get together for an RFP that came in to be part of a proposal. And she put me in front of people that I had never met before that are really into city building and different types of concepts that I've just never considered. And we got together and we just started brainstorming and coming up with a whole new product set that we would like to create together. So now what we're all doing is we're clustering. So that's another thing that I'm seeing happening, is the clustering of your company with other companies to fulfill a need. And I can decluster and move over to another cluster of partners that I work with. And that's actually how I've been making my business. But this last one was so profound. We came up with such amazing ideas as answers for this particular client. And yeah, boy, we'll be doing it again, because, you know, we were firing on all engines there.
I think what really sprung an idea for me with what you just said are a couple of really interesting things. One is, you know, basically engineering serendipity. I think the more random collisions, the greater and brighter those eureka moments are. But here's the other thing. I think we also have to be cognizant of the various things out there that are going to steal and distract us from attention and focus. And I think that there's this constant need for balance between collective consciousness and collective creativity, and being able to take something, consolidate, reach a consensus and a convergent way of thinking, and really being focused on a problem for a long time. And so that's one of the things I think we are, is we're such a distractible society. We've got things pinging and popping in front of us every minute of the day. So how do we bring our attention and crystallize it on an idea? It may be the winner idea or it might not, but you need to put the right amount of attention and focus on it so that you can see if it has legs. So I was just curious about how you sort of manage your focus and distractibility. And I think that was a book written by, I think it was Ural, can't remember his name, but it was called Indistractable, very famous book. So just curious how you remain indistractable when you need to be.
That's a good question, and it is very hard, because especially now, I've been on the phone with people who have children running in the background and that kind of stuff, which is, it's delicious, because I kind of like that background noise with happy kids in the background. But there's work and there's family challenges. I go for a walk, and then when I'm in my office, I close the door and I'm focused on the screen with the multiple people that I'm talking to at any given time. I have various, I work out every morning. I have this whole routine that I do. So I'm mostly a long walks and kind of person, and then I'm in. Now, can I be easily distracted if something happens, if the phone rings? And yeah, but what's interesting is if I'm working on a particular challenge that I'm really into, okay, I can bounce right back in. Except, of course, when I'm distracted, the person who distracted me is going to get in, like all the stuff that's going on in my head. They're going to hear about it, because I have to get it out and I have to tell others about it as we're idea generating. So I don't know how useful it is, but that's what works for me.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think just extracting your idea about, you know, these multi-collision ideas and having all these new clusters and opportunities, I think really to this community is being able to generate those, but also learning how to equally focus. So just a couple of other key personal questions I just want to ask is there a book that you have either gifted a lot to somebody or recommended a lot? And if so, what has been something that you've really thought was pivotal in your life as a book that you'd recommend?
So the thing is about books, I read voraciously. I read mostly science fiction. I'm reading one now and I could look it up on my phone, but I didn't think it was going to be that much of interest to a lot of people, because I like to keep my head in the future. And saying that, what I was going to tell you is that what I would recommend is to go to Coursera and take a course. I started a course in December, which I love. It's so good. It's called Futures Thinking. There's 5 courses in the whole program. I'm on the fourth one. I'm a little late getting it done because of all the stuff that's going on. But my God, it's so incredible, because I'm a design thinker, but now we're putting the future lens on it. I'll tell you just one of the interesting things that might be of interest to everyone who's on the call. And that is what they start to do is the very first thing is projecting yourself into the future 10 years from now. What was so awesome about that is 10 years from now, 2 weeks ago, is very different to me now, 10 years from now, does that make sense? So trying to get my head around, okay, well, where do I see the world? But the cool thing about this course is you can imagine a world in 10 years. imagine it. What is the world that you want to live in? And then the second thing is, what's your place in that world? I just think it's the most delicious, fabulous thing you could possibly do, is to find that, just dream it, touch it, feel it, smell it. And when you find your place in it, then, and pull yourself back to now, okay, so what is it I need to do to prepare to be there? So anyway,
I love it. And actually, that's brilliant. And it's just really on the coattails of a book that I recently purchased, Peter Diamandis and Steve Coulter's book, The Future is Faster Than You Think. And I think it rides very nicely with a whole bunch of other futurist thinking as well. And my last question to you before we open this up to questions is, what impact, Val, do you want to leave in the world?
Well, you know, I want us to work more like a community. I really think that as much, this has been a terrible shock to the whole entire world. It's also an opportunity for us to create a new world where we really start to be more empathetic with one another. We start to connect with one another. That barn raising together is something that's not done as an exception, but it's the normal thing to do, that we treat each other like a community. So I'm planning on doing everything I can to enable that.
Yeah, and I love that. And I actually have heard through multiple channels, this is the first time in history that we've had a global kind of pandemic and common enemy that we're all working and contriving. So this, again, for me is the start. I'm hopeful, and other people may disagree with me, but I feel like we're on the precipice of this collective consciousness, and this was really the catalyst to getting that started. So controversial or not, I do want to open this up to any questions that might be coming up. If anybody wants to, again, flag me through chatting, you can actually enter your question in the chat. So on the bottom of your bar, there's something that says chat. You can type in your question privately to me, and I will ask Val. In addition, you can raise your hand. So does anybody have any questions for Val or for me, or did you just want to share a thought? We'd love to hear from you. So this, again, is just this opportunity, because, again, we are living in the COVID world. Most of us are living in sequestered in our homes, and this is an opportunity for us to get support, just to talk, to connect. This is, again, the inaugural Toronto chapter event. So even if you just want to introduce yourself, this is a great opportunity to do that. So please open it up and let me know if you'd like to say something.
It'd be also a really great opportunity for us to hear about any particular challenge that you might be having. If you're an entrepreneur, we could talk about it if that would be of interest, or share between other entrepreneurs that might be on the phone.
Yep. We have a very quiet audience today. Let's see here. Here's a question. Here we go. So how do we see the role of artists in the future of tech?
Oh, that's great. So artists actually, they play a huge part in tech. It's just a question of matching it up. So I have to say, as you know, especially coming from IBM, that design and what you saw on the glass was never their first thought. It is now, because as we're learning that communication is everything, artists in the world of tech have a huge part to play, because they look at how people respond to things. They look at how people feel about them and embrace and that kind of stuff. It's just a question of, I always thought that getting art and tech together was more a question of language. What language is most comfortable to bring those two disciplines together?
I also just wanted to add to that question as well, Lee, and Lee asked the question, Lee Erdman, this is a really, really interesting concept, because there's so much controversial topics going on right now as we're starting to head into the movement from artificial narrow intelligence to artificial general intelligence, and all kinds of controversial topics depending on where you fit on the horizon of dystonian versus a utopian future, and what does consciousness mean and awareness, and what does it mean to be human? And one of the common denominators here is the ability to be able to create, to be aware, and artistry. That is really, truly part of the human condition. And we're not trying to suggest that maybe one day machines might be able to create art, but at the current time, this is one of those transcendental opportunities for us to be able to allow that connection point. And so I think that that's a really interesting question. And I think more so than ever, artistry and artists are probably going to be in the huge demand area, I think, moving forward. They're going to be truly representing what it means to be human. I wanted to answer another question that came up about Slack channel. I wanted to let you know that when you do receive a link to this web meeting, that there is going to be an invitation for you to click on the Slack channel that exists for this community and specifically for the Toronto chapter. So you'll be able to connect with other people, as well as we have another global community that I'd like you to invite you to. So please look for those links in the email that I'll be sending you, and please join the community. I also wanted to find out here that, let's see here, we can know who has the talents. Right, okay. It seems that most of the grief realization right now is perceived need as essentially addiction. So while this is a painful time, the gift is the realization of how much capacity we have to contribute. How have people's response to your drive changed with this crisis? So this is a really, really great question. Really, in this time that people are feeling anxious and unrestful and this tumult and do I have a job and do I have money and what's going to happen to my family? And people's default is to go back to their addictive behaviors. I mean, do we have any thoughts here? I mean, I'm even going to open this up to Val, but to anybody else around how we're all as a community and as a trans tech group of entrepreneurs and other thought leaders, how we think we can actually help at this point in this juncture. Val, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I was going to say that I don't know other people are going back to their old habits. It's funny because I'm talking to my various colleagues and friends, I'm hearing that they're at first, you know, big shock and they're not sure where their feet are. And then they're trying new things because they're in a new environment. So some people have told me that they've stopped drinking entirely, which I found really, oh, okay. Why? And they said, well, because it's kind of it's a way that I can get healthy all of a sudden, because I don't want to go into the liquor store and I don't want to be around other people who might have the virus. So I thought, well, that's pretty interesting. I think that you can develop new habits. The other thing is I'm going to go back to the whole community thing. I'm going to do a plug for SheEO for those people who don't know what that is. It's this fabulous organization started by Vicki Saunders that where a whole bunch of activists, I'm an activist, where we put in $1,100 a year to help entrepreneurs grow. What's so incredible about that is that 500 of us are part of a community. There are multiple communities all over the world that are helping these entrepreneurs with our contribution. We just give it. We don't even get a tax write-off or anything. We just do it for giving. Now, what do we get out of it? Well, yes, we get the feeling of being of giving, but we also now are connected to every one of those communities. So, you know, I'm going to go back to, you had asked the question about starting new habits or going back to your old habits. Well, it's interesting when you're part of communities like SheEO, which I just adore going, like they have now all kinds of activities bringing us together multiple times a week, which is fantastic. We're actually looking forward to those new habits that we're creating in the name of community building.
I love that. And I think that that is just absolutely brilliant. And I just wanted to also mention that there's a lot of questions also about what the new economy, and we talk about this new creative economy, and we talk about the shared economy. And I think in this new world that we're living in with COVID and the anxiety, and I just want to let everybody know that the group of people that are around the table here today are in this perfect position to do a lot of the things that Valerie has just mentioned: collating, collaborating, ebbing and flowing, creating serendipitous moments, creative collisions, and being able to start the conversation. We're going to be providing you with the opportunities to have those meetups, to actually get involved through links to these online communities, et cetera, participate. And I really want to give kudos to the people who showed up at the meeting today, because a lot of people could just poo-poo it or I'm too busy or whatever, but it's really these 1% moves. And I think Valerie spoke about this. It comes down to habit formation. So when we're going back to the concept of addiction, The fog behavior model, having the right motivation, the right ability, and the right prompt, day after day, the 1% to change what you do every single day. And can each and every one of us be a catalyst, be a solution to that somehow? And maybe that will prompt some thinking for yourself in your business or as a potential pivot. And so I also wanted to let you know that somebody actually shared with me a link there's actually a creative economy business accelerator that's focused specifically on the creative economy, and I'll share that with the group as well. In terms of the skills of the future, and this will be the last question that we'll take before we move on, is what do we think the skills of the future are going to be in the new economy? Val, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, sure. 21st century skills, they combine, a lot of people say, oh, you got to learn how to code. Yeah, to me, that's like math. Yes, you have to know that. But you need leadership skills. You need entrepreneurial mindset skills. You need problem solving skills. These are all skills that you get through experience or being put in situations where you can learn them. There's also fabulous programs out there that will enable you. This great program called Skills Camp that teaches leadership skills, that enables we're all leaders at certain times. It takes a bit of practice and then confidence, but a whole bunch of different learnings to enable you to be a really good leader. I think that that's going to be super important. The interesting thing is that 21st century is really about solving challenges, and because things keep changing. You know, this is not industrial age. It was basically you're this cog in the wheel and you're going to fix something or make something small. We're actually making stuff big. We now have technology that enables us to think way bigger, make things that provide all kinds of good changes for all of us. But to enable that, to work with large teams, to even work with small teams, and to create these clusters that we've been talking about, all this takes these different facilitation skills, ways of communication, those kinds of skills. They used to call them soft skills. Like, I think they're necessary skills.
And I actually want to build on that because there was lots of other questions around that as well too. And then another concept that I just want to quickly touch on, and that is there's going to be a huge, huge need for curation, because what we're actually seeing today is the new oil is data. And as you know, everything that we're creating now fuels on data. So what does data mean? Well, it's a whole bunch of gobbledygook, and we need to be able to interpret it. We need to curate it, and that's what people ultimately need, because as we live in this, in the human condition that we have with the bandwidth that we have in the human brain right now, until we actually all get a Neuralink added into our cerebrum, is we only have so much bandwidth to understand. So we need curators. We need people who are going to be able to build and ebb and flow and mix and meld information. And so I think that's a huge part of creative thinking. Yeah. Now, somebody also talked about in this world where we're going to be melding and molding, what's going to happen to IP? And the only thing I want to say to that is we're living in a world of dematerialization, demonetization, and democratization. You probably hear Peter Diamandis talk about this all the time. People like Kevin Kelly in his book, The Inevitable. And we have to realize that these old business models, sort of the rigidity associated with the concept of the word or the written word or the textbook, is now moving into this world of fluidity, of screens, of moving, of tagging, of mixing and remixing of information. This is actually our new reality. And so the idea of IP or ownership is going to go more into the movement of access. So we have to start to, as a community, in the digital space, start to move ourselves. Yes, we realize we'll have to go through a transition, and IP will still be important. It'll still be what's worthwhile and valuable, but the concept of value is going to change as people will need the ability to be able to remix your information to build something new. So I kind of want to end it there. Valerie, do you have any other ideas or concepts or any last words you want to leave for us before we end today's discussion?
Yeah, could I end it with a story? I actually told this at TechTO, but I want to share it with you. And it's a personal story in that it was my daughter who told me. My daughter lives in Montreal. She is director of programming for a food bank called Food Depot, a huge food bank. And I was asking her, well, how are things changing for you and what you're doing? And she said, well, they built the Food Depot on this these pillars, and they have a particular pillar called dignity. And so what they did was they built an environment so when people came to eat there, it had great dignity. Everyone is very welcoming. The lighting is wonderful. How things are served is wonderful. So now, what do you do when things are changed and we don't have face-to-face anymore? So at first they created boxes of food, and now they're actually doing deliveries. And why that was so important to me when she told me that story was that if we build our companies based on values, then it might help you to start to think of how to pivot, because you're going to keep those values, but now the world's changed a little bit. So how do you keep those values and deliver something that enables, in the world that we live in now, that hold to those values?
I love it. And somebody actually just posted in our chat line that the new oil is actually relationships. And also when we talk about curating all these big ideas and our values and everything else that means something, we need to make sure that we refine it. And I think that's a great way to say is that is all what we can do to contribute as individuals and as a community, is to be the refiners of all of these concepts into something that we can all use to fuel relationships. So with that, I want to end our conversation. I want to thank Valerie very much for your wonderful wisdom, being able to come to the table around this really strange time that we're all in, bringing us some hope and some connection. Again, I invite everybody to please take a look at the email that I will be forwarding with a link to this webinar recording. Share it with friends, and certainly connect in the LinkedIn page, our Facebook page, all sorts of other opportunities for us to connect. And I want to thank each and every one of you for participating today. Have a wonderful day, and we will talk with all of you soon. Thank you.